spread some light over a subject that probably all of us are near and dear. So thanks so much for being here, Greg.
Thanks to you, and thanks to Rebel Financial for having me out. This is great.
You're welcome. So first of all, I want to kind of get an intro from you in terms of telling us a little bit about how you got to what you're doing and what you're doing, because it's different than most of the people that I've met that do technology consulting.
Okay, yeah. Well, so just kind of a short, funny story about how I got my start. I was working at the Apple store out at Easton, and I got a phone call, and this woman was asking me a question that I knew how to resolve, but because of Apple's policies in the store, I was not able to resolve the situation for her. And so she got frustrated, and of course I was frustrated because I could help her. And so before she hung up the phone on me, she said, "Do you know how much money you would make if you actually helped real people with real problems?" And so I took that to heart, and then I met another guy who I worked with, an entrepreneurial kind of guy, and he said, you know, as we were talking about this, he said, you know what you ought to do? You ought to go and do classes at senior centers around town, and then use that to get referrals, and then go into people's homes and help people do more training and troubleshooting more privately. And so I took that to heart. I did that, and so that's the model that I use now, is teaching classes at senior centers and then going into people's homes to do more troubleshooting. It works.
That's awesome. So do you still have your connections at the Apple store, so when they can't fix something, they're like, you should talk to Greg?
No, I don't. I mean, I had a few friends who worked there, and at times they would send people to me.
They're not turnover.
Yeah,
over time.
right, yeah. So I don't have any more connections, and so I don't really get any referrals from there anymore, but I used to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, so obviously you just said that you have a bias towards Apple products, and Apple products are, I think most people could agree, more intuitive. But tell us a little bit of the reason why.
Well, so I got my start with Apple products in college as an art student, and so of course, you know, a lot of artists and graphic designers choose Mac computers, and so I really enjoyed using Apple products, you know, since college, and then since then, you know, since the iPhone and the iPads come out, I found those to be very intuitive. The reason why I continue to use them is because Apple has a strong stake in terms of products in both the computer market and the mobile device market. And so when you look at Microsoft, you know, they're the number one in computer market, but when it comes to mobile devices, they've really kind of fallen, you know, away. And then you look at Google. Google has picked up the slack with the mobile devices, and so they're real big there. But they don't really have strong products in like computer hardware at least. And so Apple really kind of has a strong stake in both. And what I find is that you know, if you need to get your devices to synchronize together, to talk to each other, to work together, at least for me, I find Apple products kind of do that a little bit better than.
Sure.
Yeah. And so one thing I find is that a lot of people have, you know, a Windows computer, an Apple iPhone, you know, and then maybe a Google tablet.
Yeah.
So you've got three different products trying to work together, and it just, you know, it's hard. It's hard.
I mean,
to
you
get
can figure it out if you're pretty savvy, but there would be a lot of frustration for most people.
Right, that's right. If you're not tech savvy, I would say never do that. But if you are, you can make that work.
Sure. But it's not going to be seamless or intuitive, or you're going to have to work some while and read some blogs. Okay. So I think one of the main things, like, I got from your website, and I agree with, and I personally, I think I do a very good job, but my wife asks me how to do stuff all the time, and she's younger, you know, and but people could get a lot more efficiency and a better life out of their technology, but a lot of people are frustrated by it. So, you know, what do you feel are a couple of the main things that, you know, people could do to improve their life to get that efficacy out of their technology?
Out of their technology, I think one of the biggest things there is, you know, what I find in my line of work is the biggest thing that I come up against is not the lack of knowledge, it is fear. And so people are, you know, and so I mostly work with older adults, and so I think, you know, but, you know, a lot of younger people still have the similar issues, but the biggest issue is fear, and so people are afraid of their devices, and so they're not willing to poke around and push buttons that they don't understand, and that's the best way that we learn, and that's how children learn. They're not afraid to make mistakes. But once we become adults, we're not really willing to do that anymore.
What if I break it?
Yeah, that's right. What if I break it? What if you know, I make it explode or something? You know, which of course is never going to happen. But
Unless it's a LG.
Right, that's right. Unless it's a
and that's probably not your
Galaxy
fault
Note.
if it happens. Yeah, that's right.
Right, yeah, that's not your fault.
Yeah, that's not any button pushing fault.
Right,
Yeah.
that's right.
So explore and play with your device.
Right, yeah, explore, play, take a class, and just don't be afraid of your device. That'll, I think, goes a long way to helping people learn their technology.
Okay. So I had a couple questions that I wanted to ask that people probably hear about. It's probably happening to them, and they're probably dealing with it. But I think it's something like whenever you talk to somebody that's kind of an authority, I think people should go over. Tell us about phishing. For the people that don't know, tell people what phishing is, and then how they can protect themselves.
Okay. Yeah, so phishing is a type of scam where typically the way that this works is, so if you think about the term phishing, somebody's throwing a line into the water, they're trying to catch a fish, they're pulling the fish out of the water, so they're trying to catch something. When it comes to phishing scams, it's spelled different with a PH at the front end of that word. And phishing scams involve somebody sending you an email, and there's something in the email that they want you to click a link to go to a website. And, on that website, they might be looking for different kinds of information, but typically what they're trying to do is steal your password for, one of your accounts, probably your bank, maybe your email.
And they can look legitimate, too.
Yeah, and a lot of them can look very legitimate. And so, we just have to be careful there when it comes to, clicking on things within your email. Probably isn't going to do any harm to just read the email.
Sure.
And in fact, you need to read the email to really take a close look at it to make sure that it's not something that's illegitimate. I think one of the best things that you can do to protect yourself in that regard, a couple things. One is to look at the language of the email.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes these scams come from foreign countries. And so if you look closely at the English there, are there typos? Is the language, is the grammar incorrect? If this is coming from a real company, it's going to be professional. The English is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And so if you find any inconsistencies in the language, that's a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
You can also look at the address of the sender.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the header and click on the email address and try to find out. Look at that email address. Does it look like it
came from them?
Yeah. Does it look like Greg@companyname.com, or is it a bunch of weird characters?
Yeah.
And then look at the domain at the end. Is it .ru? That comes from Russia.
Yeah.
Those are country codes. So if it doesn't say, if it doesn't have a familiar domain like .com, .net,
Mm-hmm.
.us, then that should be another red flag right there too.
Sure. And I think one of the things that I've always kind of taken to heart, I think, is that you said at the beginning is don't click links.
Right.
If it comes from Chase, type into your browser chase.com.
Right.
Or only go to websites that are in your bookmarks.
Right. Right.
And don't even use there. So if it looks like it came from Chase, then just go to your Chase.
Right.
And when you log in, if there's nothing there, it probably wasn't legit.
That's right. Yeah, if it is legit, then when you get to that website, you're going to get a message that pops up on the screen that says, hey, but you're right, yeah, so don't follow those links. And if you get a document in your email and it looks suspicious, don't open it. But, contact that person through a phone call or a text or an email, or walk down the hallway and say, hey, did you send me this? Before you open that up.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So this other one, I think it's a little bit more new, but it's been in the news, and it probably is more corporate than not. But still, maybe we explain to people a little bit about ransomware and what that is. It seems like the new thing.
Yeah, ransomware. So, of course, over the last weekend or so, we had the WannaCry ransomware, which made big headlines. And so what ransomware does, I'm not entirely sure on how it spreads, but anyways, it's like a virus. It infects your computer. And then what happens is all the data on your computer is encrypted, and so which means then you have no access to it. And so then you get a message on the screen that says, hey, send $1,000 to this address or to me, and then I will decrypt your computer, and basically, so they're holding hostage the data on your computer. Yeah, and then I'll give you your stuff back once you pay the money.
Yeah.
And that's we're going to see a lot more of that kind of thing, I think. And at least the two best ways to protect yourself. The first one is to keep your software up to date. And so at least with a lot of my clientele, when software updates come out, people ask me, should I do them?
Yeah.
And the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
Do your updates. That's very important. If you keep your software up to date, then you are limiting the holes in the software that,
because Microsoft or Apple or whoever is
Yeah.
playing a catch-up game with the hackers, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And every software company is only ever one step ahead of the hackers and the virus makers. And so then as the exploits are discovered, the software makers are closing those holes, and then, they kind of keep catching up. So you got to keep your software up to date. Another big thing that you can do is have a backup of your computer. And so if you have a backup, then, when somebody holds your computer hostage, you can
just wipe it.
You can just laugh at the threat. You can just wipe your computer and restore your data from your hard drive, from your backup.
Awesome.
And good to go. I mean, it's a pain, to do that.
Sure.
But it's better than losing however much money.
That's what I've heard with a couple businesses that's happened too. It's like, man, if they just would have done their backups, they would have been all right. But instead, they either got to pay or lose
and
whatever
start over.
The difference was.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps you guys at least understand what it is. I doubt many of us individually are high-value targets or what.
Right.
So,
That's
but,
right. Mostly companies. Yeah.
So maybe tell us, one of the things I really like to do with these is like some practical thing. And I think you gave us a good one with like playing with your phone. But let's, from the other side of things, what are some like clues or what, so that if somebody's frustrated or running into a problem, that they know that they need to hire someone like you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, what I would say is, if you've gone to the Apple Store and can't seem to get any help, or you just have to wait in line for 2 hours, which is sometimes typical there, or if you're reading articles online, they don't make any sense. The tech world has its own language, and so for folks who find that language difficult, so if you find yourself frustrated, you can't get your answers, or answers to your questions, and once you get a list of questions that's so long, then I would say it's probably time to give me a call.
Sure. Yeah. I think about it, I've got a friend that's a handyman.
Yeah.
He runs a handyman business. And one of the things is it's difficult for them to come out there for just one little problem. But if you think about it, you probably got like 10 things that need fixed, and you just make a list. And it's probably the same with you. If you can make a list of all these things, even if it was, you saw some nephew doing something, you're like, man, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Then you could add it to your list if the nephew's not going to show you, or whatever, or maybe your friend does that, and then you just add it to your list, and they have like 7 things that they want you to show them how to do or what. So
yeah, and even sometimes people even call me for one issue, but then once I get there,
there's more.
There's always the questions just flow, So even if you have just 2 or 3 questions, more things will show up.
Plus, since you do it so much, I bet you you have like best practices for people. Like, have you tried this? Did you know you could do this?
That's right.
Whereas they may not even know to ask that question.
That's exactly right. I do have my own list of things, like keeping Flash up to date. Do you have a backup? Let's look through your settings. Is iCloud set up correctly? And so I have my own list of things, my own agenda, that these are good practices to.
Yeah, and you think about it too. I've known so many people that they'll upgrade their iPhone or what so, and then they're sitting there spending hours like fixing stuff on there, and if they just would have had a good backup and restored it to the new one, it would have been like 10 minutes.
Right.
And it would have been exactly the same, with just better, faster hardware.
Right, more up to date.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, any final tips or tricks or anything you want to share?
Oh boy, there's probably lots of tips. I think just kind of going back to what we were talking about before, I think my biggest tip for folks is don't be afraid of your technology. Be willing to poke around, to push buttons. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. You will make mistakes, and that's okay, and that's really the best way that you're going to learn. But nothing is, such that you can't recover it or resolve it. So I think that's probably, at least for my clientele with working with older adults, that's the best thing is don't be afraid of your technology. Play with it. Learn it.
Awesome. Well, if you check out Gregg's website here, it's tech-knowledge.us. And if you click on his calendar, kind of the middle link up there, it's got his calendar of where he'll be different places teaching classes, whether it's on iPad or Mac or iPhone or at different locations. So check that out. Maybe he'll be able to help you live a better, more efficient life. So again, thanks so much for joining us, spending part of your day with us. Next week, we got Walter Aguez coming up from Tortilla Street Food, sharing with us what it's like to own a food truck. Then the week after that, we'll be up in Pittsburgh for the Ohio Valley Society of Plastic Surgery Conference. Join us live. We'll have a couple interesting guests on to talk about what it's like to be a plastic surgeon, and then maybe some things that are practical to you. So anyways, thanks so much again, Greg.
Yeah, thank you.
We very much enjoyed having you here. This was an awesome practical session. Should help people with their lives. And you guys have a super weekend.